Hello, everybody out there in radio land. It is once again that time of the week where we come onto your radio dial and we tell y'all what is really going down from a working class perspective. Talking about everything, what's going on here in Kalamazoo, to the state of Michigan, to the so called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective. The name of the show and of the game, so to speak, is Media Cyphers, taking a critical eye at mainstream corporate media, kind of trying to dig underneath all the BS. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. So we've got a lot to talk about on the show today, as you usually. It's been kind of a whirlwind of news, and what I really want to do is kind of just buckle down and get to some of the important local developments, especially in recent weeks, looking at the current regime as it was, as it were. Um, and certainly a lot has happened in the last week, and we don't want to lose sight of some of the important updates, especially as relating to what's going on here in the state of Michigan. So before we really dig into, there's a really good article here that we're going to talk about. It's kind of the Kalamazoo County Commission responding to, particularly what Elon Musk is doing at the federal level and his kind of what him and his DOGE gremlins are trying to do up at the federal level. But I actually want to start with something a little bit unrelated that is very much in line with some real local democracy and kind of just tip of the hat to some important local organizing that I think often might fly under the radar. This is from our sister station, WMUK. They're the local NPR affiliate right here out of Western Michigan University. A Kalamazoo Township man starts a petition to organize local bus riders. It's by Leona Larson. In recent weeks, Jim Ferner from Kalamazoo Township has been at the downtown Kalamazoo Transit Center gathering signatures. His petition for a transit riders union seeks to increase service, lower fares for low to moderate income riders, and offer free rides for senior students and the disabled. Ferner used to live in Portland, Oregon, where he said public transportation was more efficient than in Kalamazoo. I rode for 10 years in Portland. It was a pleasure, mass transit, he said, adding that during rush hour, the bus or train came every 5 or 10 minutes. Now 80 years old, Ferner says he's a regular rider in Kalamazoo for a couple of years. After putting up with certain things for 2 years, I said, I wonder if there's anybody else that feels the same way about their travels as I do. And well, I guess the best way to find out is to start a petition. Ferner said he's gotten more than 250 signatures so far and recently put the petition online. It is not a new idea in the United States. In Detroit, riders started Transportation Riders United in 1999. Katie Wilson is the general secretary of the Transit Riders Union in Seattle. She's been with the group since it started in 2011 and has been advising Ferner on how to start one in Kalamazoo. Wilson said that in some cities, public transportation is treated as an afterthought. The basic idea is that as transit riders, we have a shared interest in having a good public transit system, one that gets you to where you need to go fast and reliably and safely. Wilson said among its accomplishments, the Seattle Union successfully lobbied for free rides for students and reduced fares for low income riders. Metro Transit's Sean McBride said a riders union would benefit the bus system. Getting feedback directly from people that are really invested in public transit on things that are working well, things that are working not so well, and things we can improve on and think on would be helpful, he said. They are really a good group to get that feedback from because they're so committed to public transit. McBride also said a riders union could also help rally support when it comes to funding public transportation. I have a couple thoughts on this article too. As somebody, I used to be a regular rider of the Metro transit system, and I think I'm really glad somebody like James is out there to try to kind of lobby and gather support among other bus riders to kind of improve services and get these much needed quality of life improvements. I think back to just about 5, 6 years ago. The city was starting to get a little bit more ambitious with its bus rides. It was looking at 15 minutes, at least 50, 15 minutes uh, intervals on the most busy stops. They were expanding on, I think, at least on weekends to late night hours on the buses. And what happened is a little thing happened in 2020. Some of y'all may remember it, a little thing called COVID. And it more or less brought these ambitions for the public transit system to a dead stop. That's always been something of a mystery to me, now that we are at least in, I mean, don't get me started on pandemic stuff, but we are at least at a point where the pandemic in 2020, we've been living with it for some time. You would think the bus system, we would start reevaluating some of these priorities. But actually, what has happened in the intervening years is that service on the Kalamazoo Metro Transit bus system has gotten worse. We've seen it's become much more common for routes to drop, typically because of a bus driver shortage, and that all a lot of the times that loops right into what is going on with the bus drivers union and their struggle for better wages and better working conditions. That's something we've reported on the show before ourselves. So it's important, I think, for somebody like James to be out there talking to fellow bus riders, trying to get some momentum on this, because it remains something of a mystery why the city dropped this as a big priority. Now, again, I put on my little Marxist thinking cap, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the transit system is something that is really only beneficial to the working class. It doesn't necessarily have utility for the wealthy echelons who more or less control the city of Kalamazoo. So there is a sort of kind of nobody's paying a ton of attention to it, so it's easier to quote unquote abandon such projects. But I think if we really get some numbers behind what James is doing here, or Jim Ferner, what Jim Ferner is doing here, we could see that trend reverse and maybe get back to some of those pre-COVID ambitions we, the people of Kalamazoo, had for the metro transit system. So big tip of the hat to Jim out there, and also, I mean, I didn't want to focus on it too much, but the article says he's 80, and like I'm 37 myself. I really hope when I'm their age, I'm still out there pounding the pavement, trying to get some things going in the community. Yeah, I feel quite blessed if I continue to have that stamina into my elder years. So, if you want to read that article for yourself, you can find that on WMUK. A Kalamazoo Township man starts a petition to organize local bus riders. And that's again from our sister station, WMUK. So the next article I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of following up on what are some of the local responses to the hijinks going on at the federal level? How, and particularly, let's get down to brass tacks. How are they responding to the potential federal cuts that both Donald Trump and Elon Musk have really made the number one priority of their administration? Again, seeing that 2025 Project 2025 playbook really in action, going after all of these aid agencies, um, and well, sorry, social safety net. I should phrase it that way. I've got some some things to say about U.S. aid, but let's phrase it again, just in terms of how our tax money gets allocated at the local level. And I'm going to read some excerpts from this article. It's written by Brad Devereaux. Um, and it's largely about kind of the county's response to what is going on up at the federal level. Although it looks like we're about to be joined by my co-host. Give me just a sec here. All right, sorry, I'm it's kind of tingle. We're going to take a quick little break while I get properly set up. When we come back, Lawrence will be joining us and we'll be talking about a bevy of different topics. We will circle back to what's going on at the county level, but give me just a moment. Y'all listening to 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org, your source for political revolution. Hey everybody, thanks. We're back. Sorry, I had to. You can tell we're live because it's like I didn't have all the cords hooked up that I needed to. So Lawrence is going to be joining us momentarily. Let me go ahead and dig into what's going on here at the county level and kind of their response to the DOGE gremlins invading, and again this general kind of coup of the billionaires going on at the federal level. The chair of the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners, that is Jen Strebs, said people have to respond to a coup within the federal government, calling out people making changes she believes are unconstitutional. During the Tuesday, February 4th, Kalamazoo County Commissioners meeting, Chair Jen Strebs shared criticism of Elon Musk's canceling of federal programs and systems. Musk, a billionaire who was not elected, is making changes within the government as the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. That access and authority over government payments and systems, there's one way you define that in political speech, and that is a coup. The government is under threat, and the Constitution is under threat. Changes should be made under the authority of the Constitution, said Strebs, a Democrat. Democrats currently have a 6-3 majority on the board. If behavior outside the bounds of the Constitution continues, we are obligated to respond to it, she said, urging people to contact their government representatives and find ways to exercise their freedom of speech. Democracy is not just about voting, she said, it's also a day to day exercise. She went on to speak on particularly a lot of the fear mongering around immigration. The immigrant community, both documented and undocumented, you are valued. You are loved for your humanity, and you are part of our community. The county and other local governments are bracing for possible federal funding impacts as Trump and Musk make sweeping changes within the government, including cutting some federally funded programs. About a quarter of the Kalamazoo County budget comes from state and federal funds, county officials said. Discussions are happening now on how to mitigate impacts or possible impacts. This community will live its values and its priorities, which will continue to be the safety and vibrancy of everyone in this community. Last month, the board approved a transitional family housing that aims to provide housing for families with nowhere else to go. Vice Chair John Taylor said officials will have to have many difficult conversations as they work to address any impacts. If cuts come down from the federal government, I am committed 100% to restoring that with local dollars to be sure the most vulnerable in our community are made whole. He speculated whether federal funds would be cut because the county has a diversity, equity, and inclusion program or because they're helping poor people with subsidized rent. We're going to have to step up as a local government to take the place of things we kind of took for granted with the state and federal dollars. There was brief talk Tuesday about the idea of Kalamazoo County being designated as a sanctuary county. Commissioner Montes Morales, who is the commissioner for large chunks of the Vine and Edison, said she would advise against the idea for now because it could be more risk than good. She urged officials to include other groups and stakeholders on the issue and talks about possible action. Questions about sanctuary areas have been asked in communities around Michigan since Trump took office last month.
It,
And I think that's actually, I do kind of want to respond to Ms. Morales' point here. I think it is important to understand, and there's another article we talking about in a little bit about how the Republican Party in Lansing is trying to leverage state funds to try to force otherwise more, I guess, less authoritarian or fascist areas in Michigan to toe the line when it comes to Trump's immigration bonanza. But they are the Michigan GOP, which does have a majority now, is threatening to block budgets over quote unquote sanctuary city funding. So there is a palpable fear. This isn't necessarily just like the typical timidness you might see from say Hakeem Jeffries. It's more about being strategic and thinking through about what can you actually do to support these communities without necessarily, making these declarations, which often are more important for their symbolic value than what they're actually doing. Lawrence, do you have any thoughts on it? Especially, like, I know there's been a lot of people concerned out there about how, all of these the DOGE gremlins are going to affect us here at the local level. But
Um, I mean, I have a couple thoughts. First, it's amazing to see strength and communication from our local Democratic Party compared to Hakeem Jeffries. Like, if you saw the the press conference he gave when he basically waved a right he where he waved a white flag without waving a white flag, basically singing "There's nothing we can do," right?
hmm
No action, no strategy, no nothing. And if you compare that to when President Obama won the first time and the Republican minority leaders both came out and said our objective is to make him a one-term president. We are going to obstruct and bog down the system in every way that we possibly can, and they did so, right?
hmm
And it
absolutely.
just it gives me more faith in our local politicians. In not, I mean, I don't have faith in any politicians at all, but it's better to hear someone say, "No, we're going to fight back. We have a strategy. We're going to try to step up. We're going to try to put in funding and and also the whole sanctuary city thing. If you're afraid that the federal government's going to retaliate uh, because we're a sanctuary county, okay, cool. Don't call it a sanctuary county, but still do all the actions of a sanctuary county. You don't have to say it's a thing to still do the thing, right? The other part of that, hold on one second.
Oh, well, just to kind of kind of echo part of that. It's like, yeah, again, it's our the thing about the particular historical moment that we're in. This is illustrated to me by several things, including maybe like the halftime show of the Super Bowl. But our opponents are they have gotten into power through, again, ruthlessness and brute force and money, but they're not necessarily the cleverest tools, the sharpest tools in the shed. Um, so I think there would be a lot of ways people can strategically, even at the level of like, local elected officials can maneuver around some of these impositions the federal government is making without necessarily compromising our moral values, largely because, again, they're not they're pretty dumb. If you don't call it, you,
I mean,
you,
no, no, no,
yeah.
no, no. There, we have a bunch of, like we talked about before. A lot of these politicians are servants. They follow power and paper. If you have power, which is mobilizing power, or you can affect their bottom line, which is their paper, then they will do absolutely everything you say. So the fact that you have the richest man in the world, even even when it comes to, this is a story that I wanted to talk about for a while, but when it comes to what the richest people in the world want, and they donate to the Republican Party, and seeing them take action or just do these things, right? Yeah, it has reverberating effects, and until it affects those who are our representatives, until it affects their pockets, they usually don't care. This is why local officials, you usually see them being much more active because they're still in the community. It's going to affect them too. It's going to hurt them as well, even though they may be much more well off. So it's it warms my heart to see people being like, no, we're going to strategize and fight back. I just need everybody. to be on that same page because they're not like us. And
Yeah.
they're not like us. And in so many ways. And we're gonna talk about that Super Bowl performance too. But but this is the time we need to organize and strategize, and we can't wait on federal representatives like Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi's and others because they're feckless, worthless leaders. We have to be the heroes in our own story because we have to protect ourselves. That's that if you've never learned that lesson when it comes to the civil rights movement or the abolition movement or any of the other uh movements in this country that was by and for the people, that is one thing you should learn during the month of Black History. We have to be the heroes of our own story. We have to organize and we have to fight back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like it's good, especially seeing something that is a little bit more kind of measured and really again addressing um a very tangible issue. I think like a lot of it's like it's mostly focused on a lot of pushback from the federal level has really just been about like norms. They're focused on norms. It's like it's not normal for them to be doing this. It's not, and I do appreciate there's at least like an effort to try to reassure people on the level of like, okay, we are going to be working on what is actually going to happen, how we're going to recoup some of this funding that might be lost from the federal level. Now, certainly, I think a lot of people would appreciate details, and we should hope to. We should really demand that from our local representatives as time goes on, especially as we do see any and all like cuts actually taking effect. Otherwise, it's basically just platitudes. But yeah, I think it is good to see be like again, they're addressing these like very rooted issues. There are tons of people in Kalamazoo County who use services that receive federal funds, and a lot of them are very worried. They're scared. Like, am I going to continue getting the
My
supports that I need?
bro, the shout out to the organization that is employing me, you know what I'm saying? The job I have, you know, the reason why my job can help those who are in crisis is because of federal funding. It's direct federal funding, either through Medicaid or Medicare or some other federal funding that would usually go straight to the police department, goes to CBI workers like myself. Um, so we are helping people who are housing insecure, who are food insecure, who may have been victims of gun violence, who may have been victims of domestic abuse. Like we're helping people get shelter, helping people get transportation. A lot of those people who, because we said it multiple times before, the majority of Americans in this country is living paycheck to paycheck. 70, over 70% of the country would go bankrupt. Over the 50% of the country would go bankrupt if they had a $400 emergency. Yeah, I usually end up meeting the people who are working full time who are now in that $400 emergency, and the reason why I have that job is because of federal funding, and that's trying to get people to not to have are slipping into poverty or who are slid into poverty to get out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So those type of cuts, the executive order cuts of cutting cancer research, cutting funding to um, the IRS, cutting funding, uh, cutting the heads of the organizations that monitor waste, fraud, and abuse, cutting funding to Medicare and Medicaid recipients, right? So that's not just affecting cities, that's also affecting rural areas. Because that means those doctors that are in those rural areas whose practices are working because of federal funding, those clinics are now getting cut. Their payments are now getting cut. So that means it's not just screwing over your average city people, it's screwing over everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're again, it's these impacts are gonna like ripple out, and the consequences are gonna be pretty dire for anybody who isn't rich. It's like, but yeah, we'll definitely
Where
see too.
if you're a farmer and you get corn subsidies, right? You get subsidies for the seeds and the equipment that you have to buy, right? Tractors cost over $100,000. The tires for tractors cost more than 10,000 or $100,000, right? If you
Hmm.
got federal funding because of that, because of Trump's recent executive orders, all that got cut, all that got froze. So that means you may lose your livelihood because this guy said that your government program was DEI or woke. It was woke, it was DEI, it was all these things to point at the ills of America, and they use that to justify you not getting the funding that you deserve. So congratulations, you have now messed around, and now we're finding out.
Yeah, no, precisely, and like we talk about on one hand, like it's the behavior of like we're just this kleptocratic state that is stripping the copper wiring out of the walls of the federal government. And essentially, like they want something that is skinny and threadbare, but still, again, more money is going to be put into policing. It's going to be put into ICE. It's going to be put into, if any of you like anti-interventionist conservatives thinks like Elon Musk is really and his DOGE gremlins are really going to take a scalpel to the military-industrial complex, I got a fridge to sell you in Alaska. They ain't going to do that. So
Oh,
what
oh
we're
no,
kind of
I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you recently saw. Um, they weren't just getting into like Social Security and Medicare. They were also getting in those Doge tinks. Not calling them tinks. I'm sorry, but those
I mean, some of
Doge.
our teams. Yeah.
No, but they also got into the Department of Energy. That should be concerning for everybody because the Department of Energy holds our nuclear weapons.
Oh boy.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah. So you thought it was a problem before. Oh no, it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse for everyone. And that's the thing that I need. I truly hope everybody is paying attention. The wakey, we ain't got time for this because that is what's going to be the thing that I don't think everybody truly understands. And also, some of the people that was hired in Doge, they were fired from other companies because they were selling those corporate secrets to their competitors.
Hmm. Yeah. And
Like,
it's it's aggravating. It's like seeing even a lot of like these liberal budgets, like trying to give these kids like give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're really good at what they do, blah blah blah. And
wait,
like,
what? No, no, no.
no,
Hold on,
no, no,
hold on,
no.
hold on. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this last week, and I didn't get a chance to. Giving people benefit of the doubt. If you wanted to say that you didn't understand the Republican ideology or platform before, or that you only voted this way or you chose not to vote because, hey, the parties are both the same, right? Both parties are the same. They're both are horrible on Gaza, right? If you voted because you're like, hey, man, I only care about the price of eggs and gas, and the price of eggs and gas is now higher than they were under Biden, right? If you're saying man, hey, he wasn't really playing. He was just joking. And we should give him benefit of a doubt. I would have accepted that argument back in 2016. I would have accepted that argument. I didn't agree with it, but I would accept it. I'm not accepting it now. We have seen him since 2016 and before, and what the Republican Party wanted to do and what they did. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. The thing that Trump did was he did Operation Warp Speed because he was forced to, because a lot of people in the country, especially his own voters, died because of COVID. because of anti-vaccine nonsense, right? And then he did tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the world, including himself. And he helped enrich himself. And they tried to do the unilateral executive theory of I'm the president, I can do what I want. I don't care about uh, uh, the actual constitution or rule of law. I was lying. I don't care about that. They wanted to do that, and now they've made it easier for them to do that. You can't say that you are going to want to make a deal or try to appease or try to um, compromise with those type of people, because those type of people don't care about you compromising.
Mhm.
They want to use power to benefit themselves. You have to say, no, screw you and the horse you rode in on, fam, because everything that you are doing and everything about you has now hurt this country irreprehensibly, like in ways that we will see later in life. Deregulating water, deregulating air. We already saw what happened when you deregulate air traffic control. This is going to get bad, and this is going to get worse because they're choosing it to be that way for for the enrichment of a few. That's why we're here. Sorry, Andy. I'm sorry for filibustering.
Oh no, no, no. That's quite all right. So I just I wanted to spend just a quick second here too on um this the weird no, again media ciphers is the name of the show, but this weird kind of pseudo normalization of just this insane clown fascism going on with this whole DOGE issue, where you have even like kind of liberal and liberal leaning people going on going on CBS, going on these news outlets and basically trying to give the benefit of the doubt to Elon Musk's unvetted, unelected team of like 19 to 25-year-olds. Saying it's like, well, just they need to be professionally vetted. Some of them, maybe would have qualified for blah, 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 blah. And basically doing that thing liberals do where, sometimes they're okay with really ghastly stuff as long as somebody follows the rules and they follow procedure. But let's not lose sight of the reality of what happened. And just a reminder of what happened last week. And I know we talked about this a little last week, but it just bring home. Elon Musk had a bunch of unqualified internet trolls do, like gave them unfettered access to every American citizen's sensitive data. Some of these guys, again, are espousing like neo-Nazi views. One of them has a Twitter. I can't remember if it's a Twitter or a Steam handle, but they call themselves Big Balls. It's it's just as ridiculous and insane as your common sense tells you. But if you turn on the news, it's always like, well, we really should have just vetted Big Balls before we let him go into the federal treasury. But it's like, what am I
It is.
watching?
It is.
And it's,
It is the. Yeah, we are in idiocracy, man. That is the world we live in right now, and I'm not happy to be here. I don't want to be here, and but here's the thing. Like, look, 47 is the president. The only people that he is going to listen to, because 47 and Elon both have the same problem. They are rich people who want to be popular. they're He's forced to be popular now because he's the president. Everybody has to pay attention to him, right? So
mhm.
they're forced. We're forced to watch this nutcase uh, do what he do, right? But they want to be popular while doing some of the most unpopular things in the world. The things that they want to be popular with, with an agenda that no one wants. And that, in my opinion, his lack of vanity may be the only thing that saved us. Is that he wants the admiration from his sycophants, and when the clown doesn't get it, then they are forced to, when the showman doesn't get what they want, they are forced to change their act. And that's the only thing that in my opinion is going to help us in this situation. That maybe, I'm saying maybe he listens to his base. I don't think he will, but maybe he listens to his base or tries to, at the very least, capitulate to his base when his base is like, hey, you're screwing us over and we don't like it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's worth mentioning, like I think I mentioned before on the show, when fascism came to America, we did kind of luck out in a weird way that Trump is really he's an ideologue without an ideology other than
Mm.
what is going to make myself richer. That really is their bottom line. It's not a lot of Hitler comparisons abound, but he doesn't have really any sort of grounded ideological commitment to these ideas of like Lebensraum or white identity politics. It's just things that he uses for personal enrichment. And again, now
Oh
that's not to say he doesn't have his individual
no.
prejudices and
He
biases. That is
he
100%
do,
true.
he
But
doesn't. No,
yeah.
he doesn't. But Elon does. I don't know if
Oh
you saw on the
yeah, yeah.
seventh. I don't
Hmm.
know if you saw on the seventh when Trump in his executive order was to give white South Africans refugee status.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that's kind of based on this white supremacist myth or conspiracy theory that white South Africans are being like either murdered in mass or having their land stolen.
That
It's
they're being oppressed. That
Yes, they're being oppressed.
the colonizers of South Africa are being oppressed because the colonized the people of South Africa was like, hey, can y'all stop being jerks all the time? Like just all the time? You gotta be a jerk all the time. Not
Yeah.
just sometime, all the time.
So yeah,
Can you
what is actually going on in South Africa and where this kind of ties into this is so Elon Musk is the son of again
a
uh,
Colbert?
of a yes, exactly, from South Africa. And
Yeah.
he grew up in the context of the end of South African apartheid. And that old axiom, to the ruling class, equality feels like oppression. So what basically happened is there are Elon Musk, along with some other kind of South African billionaires like Peter Thiel, for example, are all still very very butthurt that the mostly black majority of working class people in South Africa overthrew the apartheid system some what was it like 35 years ago now, something like that. And despite the fact that, again, this whole thing about white South Africans being oppressed, they still, the legacy of that apartheid, like a wealthy white landowner still own the majority of that farmland down in South Africa. Nominally, apartheid is no longer enshrined in the government, but you still have that income, that wealth, that power disparity. And there have been people in the government who want to, like, what can we do to rectify this unequal balance of economic power? And anytime it's basically the idea of like we should like tax them or talk about like, how some people have talked about land redistribution. And anytime that's brought up, it's like what's that? That C Lab meme where it's just like a white guy. It's like, are you guys gonna hunt me for sport? That's that's kind of like the reaction a lot of these wealthy white South Africans have at the idea of a more
No,
like equitable
what
society.
what they're afraid of is that black people in South Africa are going to do to them what they've been doing to the black South Africans. That's what that's what every colonizer fears. Every colonizer fears that the people that they've been oppressing is going to treat them the same way they've treated everyone else, right?
Hmm.
And if you feel that way, then maybe you shouldn't be treating people that way, huh? Like
Hmm.
maybe a fair and equal system should be the thing that you should be fighting for, right? But
Hmm.
you know, it's the same logic. It's the same logic behind people hating on the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime because I've seen this from right wing thought leaders that were saying that that his music wasn't real music. I don't know how they missed that dog whistle, right? The old colonizer way of saying that I don't like this. I don't like when black people do black music, but I do like it when white people do black music, right? But and also you had all of the symbolism in that halftime show. I know I'm only bringing this up because I gotta go. I gotta get back to work.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
fam, uh, the this is how you know conservatives can't interpret uh, art in any meaningful way. Kendrick having black bodies or black people as showing up in the American flag, right? And people are saying, "Oh man, I remember when the NFL was anti-America." Right? Forgetting the fact that Kendrick, in the way that he showed it, outside of the Bloods and Crips things that he talks about in LA gang culture and in the unity of it, right? Tying the knots of the two flags. Him and Nipsey talked about bringing different sets together, the same way that he did with the Pop Out concert, right?
Hmm.
Forgetting the fact that it's all black people that showed up the American flag, basically saying that America is, even though it's divided, America's not America without black bodies, without black people. It's literally being framed that way, and they don't get that context. Samuel Jackson being Uncle Sam, telling
Mm,
Kendrick
yeah.
that he should be the good Negro that America in the American game, how you play the game. This is coming from Samuel Jackson, for those who do not know, who also is associated with the was a Black Panther, right? Associated with the Black Panther Party, and also was an usher at Martin Luther King's funeral. He has been around and has put blood, sweat, and tears in being about that life when it comes to uh the freedom and the equality and fighting for and being a part of resistance in this country. So for him as a character to play this character, while Kendrick has is saying and doing just a bunch of pro black stuff. Shout out to the dude that got ended up getting arrested. He was one of the dancers that had the free
Yeah.
Palestine,
Hmm.
free Somalia flag, a
Oh,
part of the
it's
performance.
Sudan, but yeah,
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 for
yeah.
Sudan, right,
Hmm.
Sudan. Like outside of just being petty, outside of the level of petty that Kendrick is when it comes to beef with Drake and all that wonderful not subliminal shots that he was taking at the boy, but the political statement, even him quoting Gil Scott Heron or paraphrasing
Mm,
it, saying
yeah.
the
The
revolution will
revolution
be
will
televised.
be televised. Yeah.
It
Hmm.
will be televised. Y'all got the right person, but y'all got the right time, but the wrong guy, right? Because
Hmm.
Kendrick's talked about, I'm not a revolutionary. He's talked about, I'm not the revolutionary figure that y'all need to be standing behind. But these are just my thoughts and opinions when it comes to how he sees the world, right?
Hmm.
And it was brilliant, man. It was brilliant. I thought everything about it was brilliant. I wish that he would have played All Right and a
That
few
was
other
one thing I was
or
going to say,
Black.
but
Yeah, All Right, Black of the Berry. He could have played some of his other, like, notable protest songs, but basically making this the visual of how, because he's doing his concert and his concert's all gonna be about GTX. And if you haven't listened to GTX, what's wrong with you? Um, but yeah, bro, outstanding. And everybody who's crying about it, keep crying. Oh, and also, last thing, if you're crying about the guy who made a song that said, "Hey, we don't like pedophiles, they're not like us," and you're crying about it, Matt Walshes, the Ted Nugents, the Matt Gates, who all were talking trash about the anti-pedo song. You're telling on yourself without telling on yourself. That's all I want to say.
Oh yeah, and I think the halftime show, it reminded me a little of something we were discussing last week when we were talking about the Target boycott, and it's that I think for a lot of these conservatives who are bothered by the performance, because there were a couple of tiers. There were some who just flew right over their heads. They're like, "Oh, it's so good to see something unwoke with red, white, and blue and stuff." Some of them were savvy enough to understand they were being criticized, but they didn't really understand how. So they just like, "Oh, I don't like it. DEI, you talk too fast, whatever." But I think what it really holds to is we were talking about this last week, the idea that this hyper conservative movement that's taken control of all the branches of government, it's basically trying to hollow it out into this hyper corporate, hyper libertarian nightmare. Um, they can, I mean, they can literally do all, like, they have all the power. They're hollowing out government. They're turning it into this kind of dystopian thing. But you can't, that sort of that where the culture is at is still where the culture is at. Just because, like, Trump won an election with less than I think it was less than a third of people in the United States actually voted for him. Um, but that's still where the culture is at. It's with Kendrick Lamar. You can't just look. You can take over the government and dismantle it from the inside out, but you cannot make people prefer Kid Rock or want to throw Ted Nugent up there. People want stuff like Kendrick, and not just, again, it's going back to, I think there's still this resentment from a lot of conservatives about how the ascendance of Black culture in the last several decades, especially the ascendance of hip hop culture in the 90s, has been like this thorn in the side of the white ruling class, and especially just there's really no way to really co-opt it. So what has to happen is, while the Trump regime is in power, trying to go after DEI, accurate portrayals of history, et cetera, et cetera. You have Kendrick Lamar being unabashedly and unashamedly doing this art piece during that Super Bowl halftime show that is very much evocative in many ways, in several points, of like the Black radical tradition. So I thought that
No,
was
it
pretty
is.
dope.
Oh yeah, it goes back to what he said to Drake on Euphoria. Now notice I said we. It's not just me. I'm what the culture feeling. And I agree with a lot of the points that you made. The other part that I also want to talk about, and I'm sorry if I'm
No, go
trying to
on,
get back
go
to
on.
work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
no. The other part of that, is that we uh I feel like a lot of times when it comes to the radical tradition of resisting, fighting back, and things of that nature, conservatives will always do it, but they're always pointing down, right? They're always pointing at the minority. They're always pointing at trans people, or for example, the banning trans athletes from the NCAA, right? There's over 500,000 athletes in the NCAA. There are 7 that are trans
Seven,
on
not
that level.
700, not 7,000, seven.
7. Now,
Yeah,
it's not enough people. It's not enough people to be on an NFL or on a football team. It's not enough people to play volleyball. It's barely enough people to have a basketball team with 2 substitutes. Okay, some people are just not coming off the floor. You understand me?
hmm
So, so it goes back to the we have to be able to, and again, this goes back when we talk about culture, and also when we talk about media, because we're talking about media, our show, right? How does the media look at our culture, our representation in us as a people, forgetting the fact that a lot of the media would not give us credit when we do something. They will help whitewash the story and steal from the black creators that created it. If we're talking about gospel, blues, country, jazz, rock and roll, R&B, soul, hip hop, they tried to tell. Remember, these are the same people who are angry at Beyonce winning country album of the year and tried to tell a black woman from the South that that black women in particular, or that black music isn't country music, when country would not exist without black people.
Mm-hmm.
The banjo comes from West Africa. The first the first big artists in country music. You can go and do your history. Were black artists. Their music was stolen by white people and redid and not given credit. So it is a long history in this country of white people that cannot do what we do, wanting our rhythm and ignoring the blues that created the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where to quote D.L. Hughley and what he said about it, it's amazing how they want to try to keep erasing Black history while wanting to take credit or celebrating the things that Black history is creating. But Black people are always constantly creating history. So it's just one of those things, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go.
All
I
right.
love y'all. And oh man, there's so much other stuff I want to talk about. Uh uh it was humiliating to see Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, and how, just look, obviously we're gonna colonize the West Bank. But to say that America's gonna pay for it and then build high rises on it and we're gonna own it is wild.
It's
And
very what,
see,
yeah. He wants to
that
turn it
was,
into a casino resort.
oh
It's
God.
basically
First of
the
all,
idea. Jeez.
first of all,
Yeah.
first of all, this man has went bankrupt a number of times. He went bankrupt 6 times. He went bankrupt and uh and cannibalized his own casinos. How do you go bankrupt at a business where people hand you money and you hand them back nothing but a chance? You hand them a chance. Not even You don't even hand them a product. You hand them a chance. Hold a chance in your hand right now. That's what you're holding. That's what you're holding.
Mm-hmm.
And he went bankrupt doing that. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another conversation for another time.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
probably have some
We're
thoughts on that after you drop it, but yeah, thanks again. Thanks again for taking some time out your day to come on and talk with us, Lawrence. All right. Okay, so kind of just jumping off of that story that me and Lawrence were just talking about. So yeah, again, that was another big thing that dropped last week. Donald Trump discussing his plans for Gaza, and there's a couple of things I really wanted to point out. And we've seen a lot of outrage and befuddlement from people. The way that Trump is basically just saying, no, we're just going to see that land. America's going to own it. He's treating it like a real estate development. We're going back to like Trump in the 80s and 90s. He's looking at it as an opportunity to build up luxury apartments. And as I kind of cheekily said, probably like a casino resort. He wants to build a freaking Trump Tower. Now, to somebody like Donald Trump, this probably makes all the sense in the world. He sees like emptied out land. Here's something that he can do with it. And one of the interesting things about this story to me is the reaction of, again, a lot of the liberal media that was giving the Biden administration a hall pass to directly fund the complete carnage that led to this in the first. It's interesting the way the Trump administration is like they're talking about as like being humanitarian to the Gazans. It's like, oh, we can't have them go back there. It's too dangerous. Like it was a natural disaster. Like there was just like like a tornado went through Gaza. Well, there was a tornado. It was a tornado of Zionist carnage. from the IDF that went through Gaza, a tornado of bombs and missiles, and which often directly targeted civilians and children. So, you know, it's awful. It's horrible. There's no getting around that. In some ways, it's good that the mainstream media, at least chunks of it, are finally kind of recognizing that. But the passive voice, the way they it's just a terrible instance of something we critique mainstream media about a lot, which is there is like American media and Americans in particular have this like zero long-term memory. Everything gets memory hold, and they're trying to memory hole a genocide we have all literally seen happen live streamed over the past year and a half to say, oh, this is such a sad thing that happened. Let's go in and rebuild it. And again, Donald Trump, who I don't know, I think it's a combination of just ignorance and stupid and evil. Just this idea that you just send them to Egypt or Jordan or whatever. I don't know, who cares. Obviously ignoring that the very crux of the Israel-Palestine conflict is the fact that Israel is trying to kick people out of their ancestral lands. If they were just okay moving somewhere else in the first place, there wouldn't have been 70 years of systematic oppression, forced resettlement, etc. And again, it's very much on history. Sometimes it echoes and sometimes it rhymes. And the U.S. government's role in this was to financially and materially support a genocide of Native people. And once those Native people were somewhat subdued or cleared out, to colonize that land. And especially with some of Trump's more 19th century colonial politics and the way he's viewing his administration, trying to he wants to retake the Panama Canal, he wants to buy Greenland, all this other stuff. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. And one other thing I'll mention about it too, and this isn't so much from the media, but it's definitely been very prevalent on social media, is there's a lot of these kind of blue MAGA liberal types who have just been chirping, chirping, chirping. It's like, well, I guess you shouldn't have stayed home, or I guess you shouldn't have voted for Jill Stein, or like Dearborn deserves this. These very cruel, half-brained takes about how you didn't vote against Trump, so this is what you deserve. And I just have to ask, and I have to point out, how did Gaza become a desolate pile of rubble? How did that happen? When did that happen? Yeah, more importantly, when did that happen? Did it happen the moment Trump won the election? Did it? No, no. I think it actually started. What was it? October 7th, 2023, as I recall, is when that happened. It happened under the last 2 years of the Biden administration, an administration that has literally gone on record on camera and said, yeah, I was a little uncomfortable with how many civilians the IDF was killing, but we kept sending them money anyway. We kept sending them munitions anyway. We kept sending them bombs anyway. And people talk about how like out of pocket and cruel it is to try like forced relocation of Gazan refugees to Jordan and Egypt. Biden was proposing the same thing. We've got a record. We have seen like under the table private conversations. He was proposing something very similar as early as the fall of 2023. It's kind of it's go I go back to this, and this was very true, especially of the first Trump administration. Is one of the better things about Trump is he takes the mask off. He exposes the American empire for what it really is. Biden, he will, on one side of his mouth talk about the importance of a ceasefire and how important it is to stop the carnage and how he feels for people in Gaza. While on the other hand, giving Israel infinite money, infinite material support to continue uh, with the carnage. Donald Trump, he's honest. He's like, yeah, a bunch of carnage happened. Let's build a casino there. Let's shuffle them all. Let's help the Israels do like another Nakba and get them out of Gaza because that's what was happening. Like real politics. That's what was going on. You, before Trump got elected again. So again, it's in many ways Trump is just the more honest face of American empire with all of its warts, and he doesn't have like the folksy Uncle Joe thing going on where he will tell us one thing and then do another. So yeah, no, this is what you get. This is what you get for voting Trump. Don't let these people pretend that they ever cared about like Palestinian lives. To them, much like the red MAGA people, it's just some football game to them. The blue team lost this time. Now the red team's in. Blah, blah, blah. Politics isn't a hobby. It's something that affects every single one of us every single day, especially the working class, especially working class people around the world who are now at the mercy of the most depraved elements of American capitalism, who want to pave over their suffering and put up a parking lot and a garish casino resort. All right, so we're going to take a quick little break. We come back, we've got some more local stuff to kind of circle back to. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find the Media Cyphers podcast on most podcasting apps, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello again, everybody out there in Radio Land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So I wanted to bring up, I made a reference to the story earlier. I wanted to give y'all a little bit more details from it. This article in Bridge, Michigan. It's kind of looping back to one of the stories we started with, talking about the county government and its response to what the Trump administration is doing. And in particular, County Commissioner Montes Morales referring to kind of calling ourselves a sanctuary county and the concerns about whether that might impact funding and whether maybe we should be a little bit more savvy about it. So that's Michigan House GOP threatens to block budgets over sanctuary city funding. It's published on February 6th, written by Simon Schuster. A proposed rule backed by top leadership in Michigan's Republican-led House would ban local governments from receiving earmarked funding in the state budget unless they pledge to cooperate with federal efforts to detain and deport unauthorized immigrants. Under a resolution sponsored by House Speaker Matt Hall from Richland, the House would refuse to hold any votes on any budget bill that contained special grants for what he called quote-unquote sanctuary cities. The new rule, which Hall said will soon be taken up in committee, comes as Republicans recently regained control of the state House, following 2 years of Democratic trifecta control over state government and emerging efforts by President Donald Trump's administration to greatly increase the detention and deportation of unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. The definition of sanctuary status has not been well defined, and the level of cooperation with federal authorities can vary by each county, city, or township. Some Michigan governments that have been called sanctuary cities don't agree with the label. East Lansing, where local law enforcement does not cooperate with federal immigration agents, may be the only vocally sanctuary city in the state. Detroit has proclaimed itself a welcoming city, but Mayor Mike Dugan has said local officers will comply with immigration authorities. Hall's resolution would also apply to local governments with any rule, policy, or ordinance that would subvert immigration enforcement in any way or that refuses to comply with federal immigration enforcement measures. To qualify for a grant, local governments would have to submit information to the House affirming they will work with federal immigration authorities. While the Democratic-controlled Senate would not have to abide by the same rules, Hall's resolution would prevent the House from holding votes on any spending bills with funding that violates the new rule. And he made clear it was not open to negotiation. House Minority Leader Ranjiv Puri from Kenton called Hall's proposal irresponsible and reckless, with his office labeling a xenophobic attempt to punish diverse communities. Senate Majority Leader Winnie Bricks from Grand Rapids accused Hall of weaponizing state funding and alluded to recent turmoil over federal funding under Trump. The state budget should be seen as a tool to build communities up, Brink said in a statement. After these utterly chaotic past 2 weeks, it's clear that using funding as a weapon serves no one. So you can read the rest of that article on Bridge, Michigan. Michigan House GOP threatens to block budgets over sanctuary city funding. And yeah, again, one of the dangers of it is just how vague it is. What do we call a sanctuary city? What is a sanctuary policy? I can think to a few years ago during Trump's first term, there was a big push by local organizers to make the local Kalamazoo Sheriff's Department refused to do ICE holds, which is to say they would not hold prisoners in the county jail for immigration and customs enforcement. Now, what a policy that was, basically largely won by citizen pushback. Again, we the people, as I say, be subject to this rule that is basically just trying, not to sound dramatic, but I've expressed similar sentiments that's on the show. Giving punishing local governments for pushing back against what is increasingly becoming like this American Gestapo that is just going around demonizing immigrants and kidnapping them at will. That's basically the policy under Trump, anyway. So, which again was happening a lot under Biden. Let's not forget that. But yeah, it could have some dire implications, and local governments trying to figure out how to thread the needle, without like necessarily tipping off the state or federal government, but also providing assistance to undocumented folks may really be the way to go. So yeah, you can find that on Bridge, Michigan. And I also wanted to highlight this is another article from Bridge, Michigan. It also kind of highlights, we mentioned uh, you know, um, the absolute fabricated nature of the trans panic scare cannot really be underscored enough. And I think this article does without necessarily going out of its way to try to really does that. This is an article from Bridge, Michigan. Michigan transgendered youth to continue high school sports despite Trump order. Michigan high school sports officials said Thursday they will not immediately reverse policy allowing transgender athletes to compete in sports despite a new executive order by President Donald Trump. Instead, the Michigan High School Athletic Association is going to continue with our policy as is until officials have quote unquote more clarification on how the president's order interacts with state law. Spokesman Geoff Kimmerly told Bridge, Michigan last Thursday. Michigan lawmakers in 2023 amended the state's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to include protections against discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation. Current MHSAA policy allows transgender girls to participate in sports on a case-by-case basis by applying for a waiver. Out of an estimated 175,000 high school students, school athletes across the state, 2 transgender students currently have waivers. Kimberly said 2 people. Two, not 200, not 20, not 200, not 2,000, not even 20. Two people. These 2 students will be allowed to play sports for now, he added. So again, I hope that really underscores how like made up this whole trans panic thing is. And again, it's a high school sport. Let the kids play. For frick's sake, God. Trump's order, which seeks to ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, directs the federal government to rescind all funds from educational programs that deprive women and girls of fair athletic opportunity, or again, transphobic garbage. Anyway, it's now U.S. policy to be transphobic bigots. I'm just paraphrasing what it says. Anyway, the order could affect K through 12 schools and colleges in Michigan, although legal challenges are expected. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who last week joined fellow Democrats in other states to challenge Trump's short-lived federal spending freeze in court, has not indicated whether she plans to sue over the transgender sports order. Her office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So again, you can read that full article on Bridge, Michigan, if you want. Michigan transgender youth to continue high school sports despite Trump order. We're going to take a quick little break, come back. Got a couple more things to talk about here on the program. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at our Media Cyphers podcast, which is on most podcasting apps. And you could also find us on Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello, everybody. We are back. This is Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. I'm your host, Andy Argo. As always, following and preceding thoughts, views, and opinions are not those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they turn out to be. This was passed along from our co-host Nora, and I thought this is some really good, just nuts and bolts stuff to help folks out there, especially as Elon Musk has really been boasting about dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But this comes from YK Hong. Some moves to protect yourself during the dismantling of the CFPB. By this administration shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, everyone is now more at risk of fraud by financial institutions, including those that manage cards, banks, and loans. The CFPB is an independent agency that was created after the 2007-2008 economic crisis, a crisis that was caused by financial institutions and companies. The CFPB was meant to help regulate and keep them in check. That institution is being dismantled. So what should you do now? And just warning, this is not a financial advisor. It's somebody just kind of sharing some lessons that people can kind of take with them. In addition to freezing your credit in all three credit bureaus, which they've talked about in previous posts, save a snapshot of your current loan, bank, credit, and debt balances and terms. Also recommend you take a current snapshot of your credit rates, bank fees, interest rates, APRs, and other fees and rates. Also keep tabs on fines, overdraft fees, monthly fees, junk fees, and late fees. Watch for any new fees, any changes, and increased rates. Start carefully reading that fine print. The CFPB, which is supposed to watch over all of that and keep it regulated, is being attacked. Be discerning about taking out any new loans or opening new lines of credit. Be realistic and crunch the numbers yourself for what you can and cannot afford. This is always the case, but do not depend on the institution that is giving you a loan or giving you credit to determine how much loan or credit you should receive. You should be the one deciding that, not them. They, of course, will try to give you as much credit or as big of a loan as possible. Only take out a loan or use as much credit as you absolutely need. I predict rewards programs, such as those with credit cards, will become devalued compared to what their worth is in cash. But we will still witness an increase in more of these points and certificate rewards programs being pushed on us. Remember, that is not real money and guarantees that card or company that you are locked in with them. But now, from now on, negotiate account rates and fees and do so retroactively if possible. Find rates and accounts that will remain fixed in their fees, charges, and rates. If you can, try to pay down your debt. Any balances, if you can't, try to find a place where the interest rate is very low or fixed. Be vigilant about your finances. Financial institutions essentially will have nothing to keep them in check. Now it's up to us to take care of, look out for, and educate each other. But that's how it always should be anyway. Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes for folks who want to peruse that for themselves. I'm gonna be, I think, one more article here might close out the show a little bit early. This was published on February 8th, and it's a very pertinent update about the state of the bird flu, H5N1. It's written by Evan Blake and Benjamin Mateus. It's published on February 8th. Trump's assault on public health and the growing threat of an H5N1 bird flu pandemic. Over the past week, a series of developments have reaffirmed the imminent danger of a highly pathogenic avian influenza, or H5N1 pandemic, for which American and world capitalism are wholly prepared. Historically, bird flu has had a 50% fatality rate among humans. Were such a pathogenic variant to begin spreading through society, the crisis could quickly dwarf that of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which has so far killed nearly 30 million people and debilitated over 400 million more with long COVID. The latest such development took place on Friday when New York Governor Kathy Hochul ordered the temporary closure, cleaning, and disinfection of all live bird markets in New York City, as well as in Westchester, Suffolk, and Nassau counties. The order came after bird flu was detected in 7 birds at markets in Queens, the Bronx, and Brooklyn during the past week. This followed the Monday issuance of an advisory to all health institutions in the state by the New York State Department of Health and New York State Department of Health and Mental Hygiene recommending accelerated subtyping of influenza A in hospitalized patients as part of a belated attempt to detect cases of bird flu. The advisory, issued over 2 weeks after the CDC released a nearly identical statement on January 16th, suggests that any patient hospitalized and found to have influenza A should have the culture tested for bird flu within 24 hours of their positive test. The U.S. is presently mired in its worst flu season since 2009, with New York and 42 other states experiencing high or very high levels of respiratory illnesses, including the flu, COVID-19, and respiratory and RSV. The CDC estimates that there have been at least 24 million illnesses from the flu alone, causing 310,000 hospitalizations and 13,000 deaths so far this season. Over the past year, scientists have continuously warned of the dangers that patients co-infected with seasonal flu and bird flu could facilitate a reassortment of genes between the viruses, with bird flu evolving to become transmissible between humans. Given the minimal testing for bird flu to date, this could very well be taking place under the radar of public health authorities. Another critical development came on Wednesday when the U.S. Department of Agriculture released data indicating that the more dangerous D1.1 genotype of bird flu is now spreading among at least 6 dairy herds in Nevada. This is the same genotype which recently killed an elderly man in Louisiana and placed a teenager on life support in British Columbia. Researchers studying the D1.1 strain are concerned with how quickly it is assuming dominance among cattle. They're still trying to determine its capabilities and ascertain why it is spreading so fast and behaving aggressively. With hundreds of thousands of farm workers interacting with animals in the U.S. poultry and dairy industry, the danger of spillover of this lethal strain could grow quickly in the weeks and months ahead. Finally, on Thursday, the CDC released a redacted version of its long-standing Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which makes no mention of bird flu whatsoever and is only a third of the normal length. When the report was initially published online, it included data showing that bird flu can likely spread from cats to humans and vice versa within households. But these data were quickly taken down and not included in the version of the report sent to news agencies. So again, that is the kind of uh, state censorship in progress between this kind of gag order Trump's put on organizations like the CDC. For the first time in the agency's history, the release of the MMWR was delayed by over 2 weeks due to a sweeping gag order imposed by the Trump administration to suppress virtually all public communications from numerous federal agencies. Prior to the issuance of the gag order, at least 3 reports on bird flu were slated for publication in the MMWR, and the removal was not explained. This is redolent of Trump's heavy-handed censorship of the CDC in mid-2020 when he blocked the publication of multiple studies on COVID-19 in MMWR reports. All of these ominous developments take place on the eve of the looming Senate confirmation of the quack anti-vaccine zealot Robert F. Kennedy Jr., slated to become Trump's health secretary soon. The only Republican who was briefly undecided, Bill Cassidy, cast a decisive vote in Kennedy's favor on the Senate Finance Committee, making his confirmation in the full Senate all but guaranteed. In the weeks ahead, the rest of Trump's gang of anti-science charlatans are on track to take the helm of the nation's public health agencies. They include these include the mass COVID infection advocate Jay Bhattacharya to head the National Institutes of Health, television huckster Dr. Mehmet Oz to head the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and anti-abortion fanatic Dave Weldon to head the CDC, to name only the most notorious of the bunch. Their stated aim is to cripple and destroy the agencies they are ostensibly tasked with leading. Alongside the broader wrecking operation to smash all social services in the US, led by the fascist oligarch Elon Musk, the entire public health edifice is set to be dismantled. On Friday, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Trump administration is preparing an executive order to fire thousands of HHS, CDC, NIH, FDA, that's Food and Drug Administration, and CMS employees as soon as next week. In November 2023, Kennedy State started. Oh, pardon me. Kennedy stated at an anti vaccine conference that he plans to fire 600 NIH workers, adding, "We're going to give infectious disease a break for about 8 years." What the hell does that mean? That sounds ominous anyway. In addition, the first 2 weeks of the Trump administration have seen the ending of all relations with the World Health Organization, the defunding of U.S. aid, the shuttering of thousands of public health web pages, and sweeping attacks on research and scientific inquiry. The threat of myriad infectious diseases facing humanity could not be higher. Not only bird flu, but every virus and pathogen known to man is breathing a sigh of relief in the knowledge that its closest allies, Trump and Kennedy, will soon shepherd it into communities across the U.S. and internationally. The anti-public health measures of the Trump White House are akin to shutting off all the water mains in a burning building while giving a press conference saying that everything is fine. It's not unlike the dog meme, we are all aware. In response to this existential crisis, the Democrats have not lifted a finger, making clear that nothing will be done by any section of the capitalist political establishment to protect the health of the population. The Democratic Party, through its total dismantling of all public health measures against COVID 19 under the Biden administration, set the ideological and material precedent for Trump and the Republicans to quickly overthrow what little remains of public health infrastructure. The very fact that the U.S. is the epicenter of the growing threat of bird flu is due to the criminal negligence of the Biden administration and state governments controlled by both capitalist parties, which over the past year placed profits over lives and willingly let H5N1 rip through hundreds of dairy cattle and poultry farms. In the process, 66 Americans were officially infected with bird flu, the second highest annual figure for any country since the virus was first detected in 1997. The fight for public health and the prevention of the next pandemic will only be taken forward by the working class in unity with principled scientists. It is entirely possible to stop bird flu in its tracks, as well as to end the ongoing COVID 19 pandemic, eliminate seasonal flu, and more, but only through the deployment of a socialist public health program. The global rejuvenation of indoor spaces, including retrofitting with high efficiency particulate air filters and safe development of far UVC technology, would dramatically cut down transmission of all respiratory pathogens while minimizing the risk of bird flu and other emerging infectious diseases. Combined with mass testing, contact tracing, the safe isolation of infected patients, and the use of high quality masks, the elimination of numerous pathogens would quickly be achieved. The fight for this socialist public health strategy must become a critical component of the fight against fascism and the Trump administration's ruthless assault on the working class. That was from the World Socialist website, written by Evan Blake and Benjamin Mateus. Trump's assault on public health and the growing threat of an H5N1 bird flu pandemic. I think we're going to close out the show a little early with that one. I want to thank all of y'all for listening. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to do some pre-recorded shows, and just as a little preview, it's going to be focusing on Black history, and it's going to be kind of framed around the way that the truthful telling of history across the country is being criminalized and outlawed. So please join us the next couple of weeks for a two-part series, Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, Black History and Fugitive Pedagogy. We're going to be featuring some important articles, some important history, as well as some of our past recordings we've made with not only local historians, but some critical ideological material that, especially in this era of fascism and late stage capitalism, really are more critical than ever. Thank you again for listening. Stay tuned. Electropop Therapy will be on at 2, featuring DJ Danger Groove, i.e., my alter ego. For everybody listening online, again, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and the Media Cyphers podcast, which is on most podcasting apps. Please tell your friends because we're getting shows like ours are really getting buried and shadow banned on just about every capitalist outlet. So really, it is word of mouth that gets us into people's ears. Everybody, thanks again for listening. And until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.